Chapter 20. The next few months crawled by like a garden snail on loose sand. There were few jobs available during that winter, and early spring wasn't much better. And after several dinners in the company of her sister and Lord Fayne, Kessa was ready to do just about anything to avoid them. Long rides with Celeste helped. Staying out late at night solved two problems. She didn't have to feel like the third wheel at the dinner table, and she could spy on the nightlife in Cyrene. Every so often, she'd spend the night at headquarters. Most of the time, though, she'd climb into her bedroom window late enough to elude a confrontation with her sister. At least now she had filled in the blank about why she rarely saw her sister. Not just work, but love had kept her elsewhere. Aquestria hadn't wanted her to know about her love affair with Malieous Fayne. She'd done her best to keep it secret. How could she have known that Kessa would walk through the door just after midnight that fateful night when she'd found them embracing in the parlor? No wonder Aquestria had pulled away from him so sluggishly. She was doubly upset. She had to leave his embrace, and they'd been discovered. It was months since that night, and the sisters had yet to even talk about it. Somehow, Kessa found herself preferring the notion that her sister avoided her due to dislike, distrust, or her reputation, rather than the reality that she was entangled with the dungeon keeper. How messed up was that? How unreasonable that she'd prefer her sister hating her to being in love with Lord Fayne. Now that the secret was out, she saw her sister all the time, and the dungeon keeper. Oh, how she wished things would go back to the way they were before they came to Cyrene. The fact she had no one to talk to about it added to her frustration. Thomas and her co-workers constantly shut her down whenever she started to complain, and Quinn wanted to hear about it even less. Even Celeste whinnied, snorted, and pawed the ground impatiently when she got on the topic. So she kept her feelings bottled up. Though she found herself avoiding No. 5 Hibiscus Grove, Kessa frequently had breakfast there. Her sister had usually gone to work by the time she awoke, and she loved being in the kitchen alone. One morning, just after her 17th birthday, Kessa went downstairs and found her sister sitting at the table, an empty plate in front of her. She appeared so unhappy that Kessa immediately supposed the relationship with Lord Fayne was over. Her elation, however, was swiftly followed by guilt for rejoicing in something that surely broke her sister's heart. "Good morning," Kessa greeted, trying to drown out the note of giddiness in her voice. "Why so glum? You and Malieous finished?" "Malieous and I are getting married, Kessa," Aquestria announced. "I'd appreciate it if you'd use his proper name and refrain from speaking about him with such disrespect." She gingerly cradled a cup of steaming herbal tea between her hands. This unanticipated news scalded Kessa, just as if her sister had spilled her steaming cup all over her. And just like being scalded, her nerves numbed after the initial impact. The room shrunk, and for moments she stood there stupefied. A terrible ache formed in her throat, and her vision constricted to the steaming cup of tea. Equestria's last words echoing in her mind. Kessa interpreted her sister's cradling that cup as a projection of her feelings, the need to cradle her younger sister because of the hurt she knew she was eliciting. Equestria sighed, letting go of the mug. "I was afraid you'd take it badly. We'll talk about that later. Right now, I'm deeply disturbed by more rumors I've heard about you lately." "Rumors?" Kessa repeated in a whisper. "Yes, I didn't believe all the rumors I heard about you. Perhaps I should have. And all of this would have come as less of a shock." "You go ahead and believe all those disturbing rumors about me, Addie, if you feel you must. You'll be more prepared than I was. when you discover, to your dismay, that they're true." "What are you saying, Kessa?" "You obviously don't need to hear it from the source like I did. Go ahead and believe what you want. It doesn't matter what I have to say." "That's not fair. I simply want reassurance. And I want—" Splaying her hands flat, she thrust them downward, hoping the calming gesture would keep the fit of rage contained. "You can't marry him, Aquestria," she said emphatically. "What?" Equestria's brow furrowed. "We're back to that, are we? Listen, Kessa, I will marry him. That isn't the matter I wish to discuss right now." "It's the only matter I'm discussing with you, like it or not," Kessa snarled, her fingers clenching into fists. "So, when is this blessed event to take place? Or are you planning to keep me in the dark about that, too?" Sarcasm dripped from every syllable like venom from a snake's fangs. Resignedly, Aquestria looked away. 4 days hence. Marvelous! Marvelous! What a wonderful birthday present! A dangerous psychopath for a brother-in-law. Equestria's eyes widened, feeling suddenly guilty for having yet again forgotten about her little sister's birthday. She took a sip of tea, hoping to mask this realization, but Kessa was too quick. "You forgot, didn't you? Again! My life just keeps getting better and better." Equestria stood up, her grip on the cup tightening until her fingertips went white. "Kessa, this isn't about you." "Oh, I already know that. Trust me. It's been pounded into me." "Your career, your devotion to duty, your uprooting to Cyrene, your. Rationalizing that Thomas had told her to downplay her aptitudes and skills around people she knew, Kessa discarded her emotional safeguards and exploded in a volatile tirade of complaints, accusations, and criticisms. Sinking resignedly back into her chair, Aquestria tapped her fingernails on her mug, waiting for the finale, which came abruptly when Kessa spun to see Malieous standing stolidly in the doorway, arms folded, near black eyes penetrating. His presence cooled Kessa's simmering like a block of ice. Peering around Kessa, he commented, "I take it you've told her our news." Sidestepping the youngest Decora, Malieous went over to his fiancée, bent down, and gently kissed her just long enough to make Kessa huff and look away with revulsion. He whispered something in Equestria's ear that made her laugh like a tinkling of tiny bells. Kessa had never heard her laugh like that before. The ache returning tenfold, Kessa craved an exit, an escape, to anywhere. Just as she turned to leave, Malieous cautioned matter-of-factly, "Miss Decora, trust me when I say your affiliation with me will go much smoother if I never hear you speak to your sister that way again." "No affiliation at all will run the smoothest," Kessa retorted, folding her arms defiantly. Malieus's eyebrow rose, the faint traces of a grin playing on his lips. "I'll do my best." "Kessa, please," Equestria pleaded, dissolving Kessa's resolve to mush. Heaving a loud, discontented groan, Kessa scowled and beelined for the door. Before she slipped outside, she called, "I wish Father were alive. You wouldn't be marrying Malicious if he were." Not content with simply leaving the scene with the last word, Kessa skirted round the house and discreetly peeked through the small kitchen window. "Kessa's always been headstrong, but she'll come around. I'm sorry, Malieous," Equestria was saying, Like I keep reminding you, she's responsible for her own behavior. She's young, and like you said, headstrong. I know, but I can't help feeling like I've neglected her too much. I'm the only blood relative she has, and I'm responsible for her care, for raising her. It upsets me to see you so troubled. Can I do anything to help? Perhaps a private tutor or a job would benefit her. With a resonant harumph, Aquestria declared, Trying to get Kessa to sit still and learn or work is like asking a fish to fly. No, I must sort this out. This is a problem I must deal with on my own. Thank you for your offer, though. I understand. I'm sure all will work out. In the meantime, I have some news that will cheer you up. Oh? I've taken the liberty of booking you some extra time off after our honeymoon. Turns out I have some business. Not wanting to hear about the dungeon keeper's business, Kessa left the window and jogged toward the road. Every part of her was humming with a variety of emotions, none of them good, and all of them impossible to suppress. She felt spurned, easily cast aside with a flippant comment. Aquestria had referred to her as a problem to be sorted out, as though she were a rock in her shoe or a fly in her soup. That hurt. Fury seared her insides, spurred on by that hurt, and the knowledge that her sister was engaged to a man she despised. Burning tears spilled down her cheeks as she ran, her loose hair swirling behind her. Darting blindly through the streets, Kessa aimed straight for Dragon's Peak, a place she hoped would either calm her or end her suffering. She reached the sheerest cliff wall that Dragon's Peak had to offer. Leaping on without any hesitation, she started climbing, locating handholds on the fly. This cliff face was infamous among thieves, spies, and rock climbers alike. It was as deceitful and deadly as a cliff could be, allowing an amateur to ascend a couple meters before confounding them with its crux, a large expanse of one-finger pockets, toe footholds, blank rock, and nearly impossible leaps. The deadly part became obvious once the climber realized they couldn't ascend any farther and discovered that the descent was much more treacherous than their initial climb. No one had ever succeeded in scaling it alone, and many had died trying. A legendary death trap, it served Kessa's dire need for distraction, a dangerous, reckless, potentially lethal distraction. She didn't care about its reputation or the warnings. She'd conquer it or die trying, and either conclusion would suffice. Kessa Decora, you get back down here right now. The voice was stern, commanding, and reinforced by an echo requiring prompt obedience. Kessa froze momentarily, and then, grasping her hold tightly, maneuvered herself so she could peer down. Thomas stood at the bottom, his head tilted upwards, and his hand shielding his eyes from the sunlight. His other hand pointed downward with almost as much authority as his voice. Growling in unreserved frustration, Kessa acknowledged his command, but didn't move. Have you learned nothing from our training? Get yourself together and get down here now. Staring at the blank rock, her fingers beginning to ache, her muscles trembling with the strain of holding her, she considered his demand. Thomas, her mentor and trainer, had encouraged her to become something more than she was. He'd always been there, believing in her, helping her to deal with Aquestria's desertion, her difficult emotions, and her need for distraction and reassurance. She respected and loved him like the big brother she'd never had. After a moment of silence, she let go of the rock, hanging by one hand, swinging like a monkey. "How'd you know I was here?" "Don't make me say it again." Smirking, Kessa let go. Scraping her boots along the rock, she plummeted downward and landed in an elegant roll. Thomas groaned. Although she'd only been approximately 4.5 meters up, her letting go had made his stomach plummet like she had. "I could have done it, Thomas." She grinned impertinently, dusting off her hands. "I could have climbed it." He peered at the ground silently, a stony look of disapproval on his face. "Are you here to protect me again, or do you have work for me?" "Perhaps." Thomas overlooked her impudence, knowing it was a wavering shield blockading the emotion she was managing. "I heard the news about your sister's betrothal and was on my way to your house when I saw you tearing through the street like a bull seeing red." Kessa folded her arms, fending off the impact of hearing the unhappy news again. "The king wishes to see you," Thomas announced, changing the subject. Although her heart raced inexplicably, her intellectual displeasure was clear when she grumbled, "What about?" "I don't know. I'm just the summoner." He looked her up and down as if appraising her. She was outfitted simply in a white linen chemise cinched at the waist. Black leggings hugged the attractive curves of her legs, and her black leather knee boots, now scuffed, completed the ensemble with practicality. "I've never seen your hair loose," he remarked. "I didn't have time to—" She stopped and then whacked him playfully. "Do I meet with your approval? Am I all right to see the king, or do I have to change into some ridiculous dress?" "You're fine. Come on, here's a cape." Skirting the barrage of people now crowding the streets, they hurried to the castle's secret entrance, beside the bakery, and ducked inside. Showing Kessa to a small, sparse room with only a single desk and a wooden chair for furniture, Thomas peeked out the doorway to ascertain if the king was en route. They hadn't been waiting long when the king arrived, apparently agitated. "It's about time you brought her, Thomas. I won't tolerate any further tardiness." "My apologies, sire." Thomas bowed. Cassius assessed Kessa with such unbridled vehemence that she feared he'd pounce and tear her head off at any moment like some deranged jaguar. Then he started to laugh, a long, drawn-out chortle that was as disconcerting as it was cryptic. "Thomas?" "Yes, sire." "Leave." Thomas hesitated, glancing at Kessa. "Thomas, didn't you hear me?" "I did, my liege." Seizing Kessa's hand, he turned to go. "The girl stays, Thomas." "Sire?" "Thomas, I'll meet you at our entrance in 5 minutes. I'm sure whatever the king wishes won't take long." She peered back at Cassius shrewdly, refusing to be intimidated by his behavior and attempting to reassure Thomas at the same time. The king cocked his head. "How she's grown, eh, Thomas? In wisdom as well as—" He looked her body up and down and licked his upper lip. "Physically." Thomas's hesitation returned, his concern for Kessa evident but futile. With a wave from Kessa, he finally left. "How may I be of service, your majesty?" The words scraped out like butter on burnt toast, more harshly than she'd intended. "Ah, Kitty," Cassius sighed. Slowly making his way over to her, he feathered his fingers through her hair. He closed his eyes, relishing the scent and feel of it. Suddenly he yanked a handful of it. She gasped, her posture contorting with the effort of reducing the pain. Taking a deep breath, he lowered his lips to her ear. "You shouldn't wear your hair loose, kitten. It's too easy to use against you." Furiously, she stomped at his foot, then his leg, but he dodged her endeavors. "Tut, tut!" Leveraging her hair, he tossed her at the wall, steadying the length of his fingernails as her head banged against it with a thud. Whipping around, she seized a penknife from the desk and flung it at him. Catching it, he crashed into her with lightning speed, slamming her back against the wall. "Don't tease me," he murmured, skimming the sharp edge of the penknife along her cheek. Arching an eyebrow, she twisted her wrist, making him aware of the dagger thrust just beside his upper thigh. "Oh, Kitty, you are good," he chuckled, slashing the penknife down her jawline. Blood seeped through the small cut, beating like tiny rubies studded on a creamy pillowcase. He evaluated her, rammed against the wall, breathing accelerated, hair cascading around her shoulders, eyes smoldering, lips as red as the blood on her cheek, and his knees weakened. He'd never experienced that before. It both excited and bothered him. As the king stood there, watching her with the enigmatic expression of a baby eyeing a rattle, Kessa underwent a barrage of sweltering heat, reckless desire, and feral aggression. Unleashed by a bizarre combination of attraction, resentment, and rage, inspired by the day's events, these feelings ran rampant, annihilating any cognizance. Kessa wanted to tear into him like some untamed beast, gaining control and domination through a perverse mixture of pain and pleasure. Laying the penknife on the desk precisely the way it had been, Cassius withdrew a handkerchief and dabbed the blood from her cheek. "If you're finished playing, kitten, I shall tell you why I summoned you." Her body quivering with adrenaline and anticipation, she lowered her dagger, sliding it back into its secret sheath in her pant thigh. Inhaling deeply, she counted down from 10, a consummate method of calming her emotions that had worked many times in the past. "Claws retracted? Good kitten." As her eyes widened and her ears perked, Cassius mused on how apt the pet name of kitten was. Kessa momentarily appeared just as a baby feline would upon spotting a mouse. "It is too small a matter for your superiors, who are busy with other more important affairs. Plus, you are familiar with this case. Amberly Lestroy, the daughter of Baron Lestroy. I trust you remember him. You ensnared him in Daisyfield, along with his despicable, larcenous friends." She signaled affirmation, her expression of disgust at the mention of the merchant barons from Daisyfield matching the king's. "It has been revealed to me that Amberly is following in her father's footsteps and has chosen a life of crime. She thinks she can get away with it, right under my nose, here in Cyrene. Find her. Bring her to me." Unexpectedly grabbing a tight hold of her, he drew her close. Smiling wickedly, he whispered, "Let's just say this is the perfect job for you. I'd appreciate it if you'd speak to no one about our little chat. When I give out assignments personally, I intend them to remain secret. Understand?" Letting go of her, he slapped her cheek impishly. "Now, go hunt, kitten." Curtsying exaggeratedly, Kessa realized her knees were weak. Not sure whether her aim was to be coquettish or cynical, she noted that the king reveled in her curtsy nonetheless. Her cheeks stinging, her head aching, and her arms sore where he'd held them, Kessa strode down the corridor, her behavior with the king replaying itself in her mind. Shame and guilt coalesced into a rolling pin with razor-sharp spikes that needled her as it flattened her insides. Thomas was waiting for her at the entrance, as instructed, and when she came into view his face twisted with concern. He looked at the bruise forming on her forehead, then gingerly tilted her chin so he could see the cut, which was now puffy and edged angry red. Her eyes met his before she pulled away and headed for the gate. "Did he do anything else?" he growled dangerously, following her. "No," she answered sullenly, collapsing against a tree trunk, too shaky and emotionally compromised to continue. He came to a standstill in front of her, waiting patiently for her to collect her thoughts enough to share them. Finally, her muscles relaxed. "I'm ashamed of myself, Thomas." His eyebrows knitted together as he scrutinized her. "You're ashamed?" he coaxed. She slid her fingers into the hair on top of her head and left them there, allowing her hair to cascade around her face like a curtain. "I wanted to hurt him, maim him, and then it all changed." Her head shook back and forth in disbelief. "I switched from maiming to," she sighed pathetically. "I thought things. Things I ought not to think. What would my sister say? What would These?" She hunched over, concealing her face even more. Thomas's expression softened, his unspoken fears allayed. He was no fool. He'd sensed the perplexing chemistry between the king and Kessa. He knew that Kessa felt an inexplicable attraction for the monarch, who'd not only tortured her, but enjoyed it. He'd feared that, despite her attempts to suppress the attraction, if Cassius ever propositioned her, she'd cave. He'd feared she was too innocent and naive to sense the danger she was in. Now, he could see that wasn't the case. She was aware on some level, even if she hadn't quite pinpointed it. Her bottom lip actually protruding, she looked up at him, pleading for advice or absolution. After a minute, she whispered, "Too weak, and so close to." With a barely hidden smile, Thomas offered her his hand. "Pull yourself together. I presume King Cassius gave you a job." Sniffing, she took his hand, sidetracked from her self-loathing by the reminder. "Yes, I'm not allowed to speak of it." The frown abruptly recurred. "Indeed." Honestly, Kessa thought, what a time for the king to assign her a task. Her sister's impending nuptials would keep her busy and her head out of the game. Needless to say, until after Aquestria's wedding, the search for Amberly Lestroy would be low on her list of priorities. Still, she'd ask around. Thomas started walking, Kessa trotting to keep up with him. "Thomas?" "Yes?" "My sister is marrying Lord Fayne in 4 days." He whirled so quickly that Kessa almost collided with him. "What?" You mean your sources didn't tell you when? I should think that was an important tidbit of information." He pointed his index finger fiercely at her. It was a reproof far more effective than a slap. "I've got to go, kid. Stay safe." She blinked, and he was gone. "Farewell, then." Deciding it was time to go home, she started to run. As always, it was a good way to calm her turmoil. On her way, she bumped into her sister. Both shocked by the unexpected encounter, they stood staring at one another uncomfortably for several ticks of the clock. "What happened to your head and your cheek?" Aquestria questioned simultaneously to Kessa's, "Addie, how are you?" Each question seemed to stick in the asker's throat like too much peanut butter. As the memories of her behavior with the king flooded back, Kessa went 3 shades of red, replying, "A penknife." "A penknife?" Aquestria repeated incredulously. "How?" I got a little rough with she faltered. Perhaps going with part of the truth wasn't such a bright idea. Equestria's eyebrows popped up expectantly. Yes? Well, I was shopping, just browsing. One of the merchants overreacted. Seeing her sister's expression switch from curious to accusatory, Kessa knew Equestria had connected the dots as she'd hoped, and she needn't continue her fib. It looks in danger of infection. Are you on your way home? Yes. I'll come with you and treat it. Aren't you working? It's my short day. I was done by the time you got out of bed this morning. You have a short day? Yes, but generally I train for the remainder of the day. Kessa crooked an eyebrow. Big surprise. Smirking, Equestria retorted, Speak for yourself. You're hardly ever home before midnight. Yes, I know about your late nights, sis. Surprised? I just hope It's kind of you to come home to care for me, Kessa said, terminating the previous conversation decisively. It isn't necessary. Of course it is. Besides, I'm tired today, and there's a lot of planning to be done for the wedding. Kessa couldn't keep the scowl from her face, although, to her credit, she tried. Why didn't you tell me about your relationship with Malieous, the dungeon keeper? Things just happened so fast. I didn't really have an opportunity. We've been here for almost 3 years, Addie. Amazement consuming her features, Equestria stared at her sister before gasping, You're right. She shook her head, non-verbally saying, How fast the time flies when you're having fun. I was afraid of how you'd take it, and as it turns out, with good reason. He's not what you think, Equestria. He's dangerous. If you marry him, you'll end up regretting it. Don't, Kessa. I love him. That's all. Just learn to live with it. Kessa frowned. Am I invited to the wedding? Of course. You're my first witness. Oh. It's not going to be a big affair. You mean you're not going to have the guards salute you and all that? No. Oh. It's going to be outside. Oh. Can you say something else, Kessa? I'm trying to adjust. Oh. So 4 days from now? Yes, Equestria confirmed. All right.